Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Buffs. Today, no Joey Richards in the house, but instead joined by good friend Zach Seegers. Zach Seegers, great Broncos, Buffs mind. Glad to have you joining me since Joey can't be here. Zach, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. For people that don't know, I was doing Let's Talk Buffs last year with Mario on the Buffs beat last year around Prime and that Buffs facility. So, I might not know it as well as you and Joey have. You guys have done amazing coverage for us here, but I'll do my best to fill in for Joey while he's living it up in Vegas. Slacking.
Totally. Totally. Hope Joey's having a great time. Joey, if you're listening, live it up, dude. But let's get right into it. Let's talk Texas Tech. Texas Tech came off of a big win last week. They took down number 11th ranked Iowa State in Iowa State, while CU was on their bye, which helped us out a ton. We'll talk about that later in the path to the Big 12 championship. But Zach, what do you think of this Texas Tech team? We'll start with CU's offense. How do you think the game's going to go for the CU offense?
I mean, I think this is a terrific matchup for CU's offense. I think you could argue maybe the best they've seen all year in some ways. I mean, North Dakota State's North Dakota State. CSU probably is the weakest defense they've played. But outside that, it's got to be this Texas Tech game. They are comfortably the worst pass defense in the Big 12. Which again is just obviously how this Colorado offense wants to live, wants to attack teams. So I was just trying to get the numbers. Yeah, they're allowing 307 passing yards per game. That is 40 more than the 15th place team. The gap between them and West Virginia at 15 is the same as the gap between West Virginia at 15 and Arizona at 9. So the gap between them and the second worst pass defense in the Big 12 is comparable to the gap between the second worst defense and an average pass defense. So they're really bad in that regard. What do you have on the other side of the ball? Travis Hunter, Shador Sanders, LeJounte Wester, Will Shepard, Jimmy Horn, and the whole crew. And I think they should, just be pretty effective against a pretty shoddy Texas Tech pass defense. That's what I really expect in terms of like how will this game go for the Buffalo's offense. Of course, you always have to watch for sacks with this offensive line, except that Texas Tech pass rush is really, really poor. They have just 11 sacks this year, and they've already played 9 games, unlike the Buffs who've played 8. So barely averaging more than a sack per game. Colorado has double the sacks they have, and again, they've played 1 fewer game. So I think this is a tremendous matchup for CU's offense, and the expectation should be to score a lot of points and not see Bassett out there much at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think scoring a lot of points is definitely what's going to happen. I mean, this defense gave up 59 points to a Sawyer Robertson led Baylor team. We saw Sawyer Robertson firsthand. He is not a quarterback that should be dicing you up with 5 touchdowns and putting up 59 points. Piggybacking off of those 2 stats you put out, I had in my notes exactly. Both of those gives up the most passing yards in the Big 12 and has the lowest sack number in the Big 12. Those are the 2 things when I look at this CU offense. Can you get to Shador? They haven't yet this year. And can you stop the pass? They have not yet this year. This could be a game that propels Shador Sanders back into the Heisman race. They give up a ton of explosive plays. There's really no way on paper, looking at the stats, looking at our talent compared to their defense, that this isn't an insane game from the offense. Hopefully they can get the running game going a little bit, keep that momentum. I think Augusta's going to start again. They've really kind of found their stride lately with that offensive line, rotating them in and out. Only giving up 1 sack the past few games, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, I think me and Zach both are on the same page when we expect a huge game from this Colorado offense. So, let's jump into the defense, CU's defense on Texas Tech's offense. What do you have there for that side of the ball?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot more interesting. I think this will be the matchup that maybe not determines the game. I really like CU in this one. I even like CU, giving the points. to Texas Tech. Just because I think this offense should be able to really, really produce well. We've seen how good this defense has been in the second half of games. I feel like they'll eventually be able to clamp down on Texas Tech, but they could get upset here. It could end up being a really close game or a shootout just because this Texas Tech offense is so potent. All three of their starting receivers are averaging comfortably over 10 yards a catch. You got two of those guys over 13. Just a very explosive vertical passing game. The quarterback's good. I don't think he's exceptional, but he's definitely a more dangerous passer than a good number of the quarterbacks CU has faced this year. You think UCF, K-State, God, who was the other running quarterback? Like Arizona. A lot of those, like he's going to be a more legitimate passing threat than a lot of those guys. And then the running back, Taj Brooks, right? Yeah, I keep wanting to say Taj Boyd, like the Clemson quarterback, but Taj Brooks is one of the best running backs in this upcoming draft class. And, I think you've seen this Buffs run defense much improved from last season. They went up against RJ Harvey, another one of the nation's top running backs, and they did a really good job bottling him up. But against K-State, another one of these elite running backs, torched him, just absolutely torched him. So, I think it's absolutely something to be concerned about. This offense can attack you in a lot of different ways. I think CU's defense is up to the challenge, but if they're to lose this game, I think they lose it in like a 48-45 shootout because, again, this Tech offense has a lot of ways they can beat you.
Yeah, Taj Brooks, he's a stud, man. But I expect this game and how the Colorado defense to really be shown on first downs, right? If this Texas Tech offense can get Brooks going and picking up 5 to 6 yards on first downs, that's kind of when things start to get scary and they can start opening up that passing game in different looks, similar to how K-State used Giddens. If we can't tackle Taj Brooks like we tried to tackle Giddens, we might be in for a dangerous time. But I would expect Robert Livingston to keep relying on that cover 0, cover 1 looks, blitz this team a lot. Morton's not a guy that's going to kill you with his legs like you would see Avery Johnson did with Giddens. So I'd expect that. But yeah, just one stat I found interesting with this team. Gosh, I thought I wrote it down, but they're the only team to score over 300 points and give up over 300 points so far this season in the Big 12. That is a perfect representation of this team. We're going to score a lot of points, give up a lot of points. It's going to be a straight shootout. So hopefully CU's defense can mask Texas Tech's defense. So I think it's going to be just exactly how we expected. Points all across the board. You got anything else on both sides of the ball there? You're muted, Zach.
Par for the course. Goodness, sorry, excuse me. I had to navigate back to the tab. I am for people that don't watch our Broncos show, I can do that a fair bit while I'm looking up stats in a different tab. But to your point about scoring, they're 320 points, 28 points on the season. Excuse me. Our 5th most in the league. Only team scoring more than them are Miami. People know how potent that offense is. Indiana, same deal there. Mississippi, SMU. Just the very best offenses in the country. So definitely something to monitor there. One thing I failed to mention when we were talking about their defense and the lack of sacks, they really don't have quality players to turn to in terms of sack getters. They only have one guy with at least 2 sacks on their entire roster. Jacob Rodriguez, he's comfortably the team's best pass rusher, and I don't think he's all that great. They also have this pass rush specialist who is the only other guy on the team with more than 1 sack on the season. He's got 1.5. He's only played 26 snaps though. They only use him in obvious passing situations too. He's got 25 pass rush attempts on the season through, again, 9 games. So he's playing like 3 snaps a game for you. And he is like far and away on a per snap basis, their most potent pass rusher. So this should be a game where the CU line holds up well and Shedeur has a lot of time to operate back there. But those are my last notes on the matchups here, offense, defense.
Yeah, definitely huge game for CU. Obviously, Lubbock's going to be one of the tougher places to play. Really good environment. They don't have to deal with the snow that we are dealing with in Colorado here, but definitely a tough place to go play. So super big game. I would expect a lot of scoring. Take the overs. Don't take my betting advice, but take the overs. Shador if you can, Travis if you can. I think those two are super motivated to get themselves propelled in Travis to assemble himself as the Heisman candidate and Shador to really get into those conversations a little bit more. So as big of a game it is, you wanna talk about the path to the Big 12 championship for CU, because if CU wants to be in the Big 12 championship, they've got to win out.
Yeah, they've got to win out, get a little bit of help too, but I think there's a good chance they get that. Um, BYU, I don't know. Maybe they win out. I feel like they probably drop one of these games. I don't think they're quite a 12-0 team. They've had a few close calls here recently. A big rivalry game, the Holy War. They have seldom won that one. I think Utah's actually got a pretty good chance to win that game. Uh, they're barely bigger favorites against a pretty bad Utah team than Colorado is against Texas Tech. Just to give you an idea, there's definitely some rivalry factor. But Colorado's path is fairly easy. They get Utah at home. Like I just said, this is a pretty bad Utah team. Um, they've had a tendency to beat up on CU, but I think this is a year CU should win that matchup. Kansas has been a really big disappointment in the Big 12. They're well coached and could upset CU, but that's going to be another game CU's favored in. And then you get Oklahoma State at home, and Oklahoma State hasn't barely beat anyone in the Big 12 this year. So you expect to win that game as well, I think. The Buffs should be favored in every single game until that Big 12 championship. And maybe even then, there's a good chance they should be favored in the Big 12 championship. Um, so yeah, like their path to that game down in Arlington, and maybe even a spot in the college football playoff, is fairly clear. They've made it through the hardest bit of this schedule. Um, yeah, already that's come and gone. Now it's just taking care of business, not looking too far ahead. I think this team has had a tendency to do that at times. I think of the CSU game last year always, where that's a team they should have just trounced and it came down to the wire. Um, but yeah, the path ahead of them is very favorable. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think going into this year, you're probably looking at the back half of this schedule, this Utah, Oklahoma State, as like, okay, those are games that we could easily lose. We got to get our wins early if we want a shot at the Big 12 championship. And it's really flipped on its head. I don't think anyone expected BYU to be the ninth ranked team in the country leading the Big 12. So it's definitely been shaken up a lot. Definitely the easiest path for CU to get in this is just winning out. That is number one thing, winning out, and they got a ton of help last week. Probably the best bye week you're gonna see. Kansas State, who was ranked ahead of them, obviously beat us. They took a awful loss to Houston, propelled us ahead of them. They now have 2 conference losses. We only have 1 conference loss. Now, Iowa State losing to Texas Tech, we talked about it a little bit earlier. They now have 1 conference loss tied with us. They're still ahead of us because of the tiebreakers. So we got to win out. And then all you need, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry. You were about to get to it right there. All they need is Iowa State to lose
Yep.
a game, and
Need
Iowa
that
State's
is
schedule is not easy.
no. You got Kansas State to end the year. Kansas, you just talked about. That's a sleeper team that's well coached. Cincinnati gave us a little trouble, and then Utah being that wild card. But if both of those teams win out, it becomes down to winning percentage against common opponents. So really, just need Iowa State to get one more loss and CU to win out. And we're talking about CU in Arlington. That'd be pretty fitting for Dion and obviously those Cowboys ties there. But anything else on the rest of the season for the Big 12 championship from you, Zach?
Well, I think it ties into that convo. Going down there to Arlington, playing in what would be the most important, biggest stage. uh, consequential game of the prime era. Um, in again a recruiting hotbed that he wants to target would be favorable. We've seen the impact of what happened when he went down to Florida and whooped up on the UCF Knights. That was huge for this team's recruiting ability. Um, if they're able to do that on an even bigger stage against a better opponent, um, and again, one of those recruiting hotbeds, and one of those recruiting hotbeds where there isn't any divided attention like there was with all those recruits technically going to visit UCF, even if Prime was telling them to do so, so he could kind of double up on recruiting visits. Um, there wouldn't be any split attention. It would just be, hey, this is the CU show. Look what we can do. And beyond that, you get to the college football playoff. That is another, obviously you're in the playoff. That's going to help you recruit, raise the prestige of the program, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also 2 more months that this team is in the media cycle. CU with a playoff game on the horizon, that's going to be talked about a lot on these morning shows. And maybe it's negative. Who cares? Really, who cares? Keep them in the cycle. Keep these kids seeing them. When Miami was blowing up and recruiting everyone in the 1980s, or Dion's Florida State team in the 1990s, the media pop they were getting was not positive. It was extremely negative. They were the bad boys of college football. And you know what? It worked out just fine for them. They got a hell of a lot of Hall of Fame players committed to that program in that era. That's fine. Let them talk about CU and how, oh, look at what Dion's doing this way. And you know what? It'll be a lot of congratulatory too. They might not be eating as much crow as you'd want to see, but it doesn't matter. There'll be some flip-flopping. There'll still be some negativity. Put that spotlight on Colorado and how great the program's doing and the turnaround Dion's accomplished or started to accomplish there. And it's only going to pay dividends. It's the proof is in the pudding. Let them point eyes at the program and let the work speak for itself.
Absolutely, and piggybacking off your recruiting point there, these players that are going to be signing on early national signing day are going to know if CU is in the Big 12 championship before they sign. Dion is like the
Huge
king
factor.
recruit flip. I mean, Big 12 championship is a few days after early national signing day, and then obviously national signing day being later on. But I mean, the momentum that they're already gaining in that recruiting, you have a Big 12 bid with a chance to go to the college football playoff. It is just going to snowpile. What do you have there, Zach?
Well, sorry to interrupt again. It's also it's also favorable how this is lining up. UCF was a team that was viewed as a Big 12 contender, maybe Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Obviously, if any of those teams make it, they are going to be trying to recruit some of the same players. Those programs have their eyes on similar guys. Iowa State is not recruiting in the same class that Colorado is. Just fact of the matter, they're not. They don't have near the NIL money that Colorado does, and they just have never recruited at the level that Colorado's. Like Matt Campbell's done a great job maximizing that program. Hats off to him. It hasn't been because he's recruiting 5-star talents willy nilly. So that favors CU well. As like Iowa State, that appearance in the Big 12 championship will be a big deal for Colorado's recruiting. It might not be that big of a deal for Iowa State's.
You say the same thing with BYU as well.
Yeah, that's also where I was going. BYU is recruiting those Mormon kids. Like they're not really pulling from the same pool at CU as CU. It's not a concern. I don't think I don't know. I don't think they're going for missionaries. It's a religious school. It's just part of the deal. And it's not even like TCU or something like that. It is, it's a unique one. Again, so I don't think that's something that CU has to worry about. Again, you would have thought it'd be Utah, Oklahoma State, maybe Arizona, any of those other programs, UCF, like I said, Kansas State, any of those other programs would also get a big recruiting boost from making it to that Big 12 championship. Iowa State, BYU are two of the very, very few that won't get that boost. And again, siloing it all to Colorado which is great. Colorado, with how wide open this Big 12 is, another great thing. If Colorado wins this first championship in the new look Big 12, they are positioned beautifully to become the new power in this conference. The ACC has some programs that should be the clear power. Florida State's having a down year, but they're a blue blood. Miami, Clemson, they're SMU with all the money and funding there. They might possibly be a power. SEC, the story there. Big Ten, the story there. Big 12 is wide open. And Colorado, right? Why not have Colorado be the power in that program, at least as long as Dion's here? It seems very attainable, especially with the pathway before him.
All right, Zach, I got to hear it because I think they're going to do it. I think we're going to see a BYU Colorado Big 12 championship. Do you think CU makes it? Do you think the chips fall in their favor and they're in Arlington?
I think they do. Again, you need Iowa State to lose one more, and that schedule is brutal. They were kind of looking to lose for a few weeks. They barely beat West Virginia. The final score was by 12, but that game was back and forth through the third quarter. UCF, they barely escaped at the very end of that one to win by 3 at home. Then they're at home again, and they lose to Texas Tech. And they were down throughout most of that game. They had to come back at the end to even have a last gasp at it. You get Kansas, who's been playing better ball as of late. Colorado has them too, but Colorado's playing a lot better football than Iowa State right now. Cincy is a quality team, Utah, and then K-State's the one I'd really circle. I expect K-State to go into Iowa State and beat them in that last game of the season, and that's all Colorado would need to have happen. Even BYU, and this is part of why I think CU has a good chance to win the Big 12 championship, and not only get there, but win it. They're peaking at the right time, while BYU struggled a bit last week with UCF. 2 weeks before that, struggled with Oklahoma State, beat Baylor by 6. They stomped Arizona at home in the second half, but we saw how flaky that Arizona team was. And then their real claim to fame is beating up on K-State, blowing out K-State. And if you watch that game, it was very fluky. That happened in a flash because of some crazy turnovers, some crazy flip plays. It was kind of like this Broncos-Ravens game. Except that was more of a one-sided affair where the Ravens felt like the better team the whole time. BYU scored like 31 points in 4 minutes or something, and that was the game. But anyways, I think BYU's vulnerable. I think Iowa State's vulnerable. And so not only do I think CU will make it to that game, I think they probably win it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think this CU team is probably the best bet for the Big 12 title winner. So talking about Big 12, talking about all this momentum, let's get into probably the biggest recruit, if he were to commit, that this Colorado program would ever get in Julian Lewis, because he's had a lot of headlines this past week. So obviously everybody knows Julian Lewis. He visited, am I blanking? Was it the Cincinnati game or am I blanking? I think it was the Cincinnati game.
You're right.
So that was his 4th visit to Colorado. I mean, this thing has been going on for a long time. He is obviously a USC commit, 5-star quarterback. Earlier this week, it was reported that Juju was going to be canceling another visit with Indiana. And this is the second time this year he has canceled a visit there. He was supposed to be in attendance when Indiana beat up on Nebraska, rescheduled that to this upcoming weekend when they face Michigan, and has canceled that visit again. And then Indiana's 247 reporter came out with an article today that Indiana and Juju are going to be going their separate ways, and they're officially out on the 5-star quarterback, barring some drastic change ahead of National Signing Day. And he also added in the article that he believes Colorado's the front runner. So that really leaves CU and USC for Juju ahead of the early National Signing Day. And I say that with a lot of confidence because USC's 247 reporter announced that Hassan Longstreet, Texas A&M quarterback commit, has also recently visited USC as well. So with all the momentum and just all the cards telling me, it really seems like CU has a really good chance to flip Lincoln Riley, what should have been Lincoln Riley's next prodigy quarterback.
Almost got myself again there. I agree. I think they probably do it while we're having this conversation about, could Colorado become the power in the Big 12? Could they reach the college football playoff this very season? USC's having the conversation about, could we finish last in the new look Big 10? Could we have our second consecutive season under Lincoln Riley where we failed to make a bowl game? Um, uh, right now, they are sitting at 4-5. In their 3 games remaining, they host Nebraska. I'll see if I can find the line on that quick. I feel like Nebraska probably should be favored in that, but Nebraska struggled too. That's at least a toss up. They play UCLA in their big rivalry game, and then they host number 10 Notre Dame. Upsets happen in college football. I think Notre Dame's a much better team than them. I'd expect them to lose that game, which means they would have to win the other two to even make a 6-6 low level, you know, Idaho Potato Bowl level bowl. So I don't know if I'm Julian Lewis and I'm looking at those two options. Something that also should get mentioned. They also had Malachi Newman or Malachi Nelson or whatever his name was. Didn't develop him at all. He ditches, goes to Boise State. There's just a lot of stink, I feel, on that USC football program right now. If I was Julian Lewis, I think it's very obvious which of the two seems more appealing at this point in time. And really quick, that line is not out yet because they're playing next week. My bad.
Yeah, everything that we needed, because it never really seemed like Indiana was going to be a huge destination for Julian. I know that he had some ties with that coaching staff. I think that's kind of why they got those visits. But it was really USC in Colorado. Those are the two big ones. And USC has had the perfect season if we wanted to flip one of those quarterbacks. I also forgot to mention that they benched Miller Moss. They're starting a different quarterback this week. That Jaden Mayava kid is going to get to start. So, I mean, that program is just – it is not looking good right now. And if you're a 5-star quarterback with the way CU's playing, why would you not want to come to Colorado?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to say this. I've not studied much USC tape. I've caught a couple of their games on TV. I don't think I've watched a full one through completion, but watch some here and there. Same with Nebraska. Haven't caught much of them outside of the CU game. Nebraska is a 9-point dog to USC. I would bet on Nebraska. I don't know. I just told you, audience, how uninformed I am about this matter. This might not be good financial advice. Face value, that makes no sense to me. I would absolutely bet money on Nebraska. I don't know why they are 9-point dogs to a very bad USC team that just been benched Miller Moss. Miller Moss won that competition for a good reason. He looked like a considerably better quarterback through the offseason process. I'm a UCLA fan as well, so I follow that situation semi closely. Miller Moss won that competition for good reason. The fact they're benching him feels a little like flailing to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see.
Maybe a little panic that their 5-star commit is probably flipping on them. I don't know.
Also, if you're Julian Lewis, I don't know if the quarterback benching, I feel like that's a negative. I don't know. I don't think Miller Moss has been a major part of their problems, frankly. And if I'm Julian Lewis and going like, oh, great, if this team flames out around me and the defense is bad and everything, I'm maybe the one stuck holding the bag, like Miller Moss. Miller Moss is I don't really know his stats aren't that great. 135 passer rating though. I mean,
yeah, and you look at the environment of USC. I saw a couple pictures come out of what their stadium looks like heading into games, and I mean, you put that next to a Colorado 8 p.m. start time atmosphere, it is just vastly different. So hopefully we flip Julian Lewis. Zach, anything more on that, or should we get into our score prediction for the Texas Tech game?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. What is your score prediction for the Colorado versus Texas Tech game in Lubbock this weekend, Saturday?
Ooh, I got CU covering here. I think CU is going to score a lot of points. The fact we've seen them take their foot off the gas in some of these second halves is something I'm keeping in mind here. I'm feeling 38-24 CU. I think it won't feel as close as that score, um, but I think they'll probably it'd be maybe some garbage time efforts or something. I think CU's offense is going to look maybe the best it has all year. And I think the defense will hold up respectably, although I'm sure Texas Tech will get their fair share of points.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same boat here. On paper, it looks like a shootout, but I think CU's defense will hold their own on some of those drives, and it won't be like a touchdown, 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 back and forth. So I am going to go with CU 42, Texas Tech 28. CU kind of just handles their business all the way through this game. So yeah, that's how we're feeling for Texas Tech games. Zach, let everybody know where to follow you. I'm sure if you're listening to the show and you don't already follow Zach, I mean, you were just making a huge mistake.
Yeah, follow me at Zach_Seegers on Twitter. I'll also find us over at Let's Talk Broncos. Yeah, I haven't gotten on Mike this week yet. So I will say really quick, not to do too much grandstanding or whatever, but Let's Talk Broncos is Joey, of course, on one of these shows. Me, Joey, and Bree all co-own this thing. And let's be real about the I don't want to say this. I think it might be a lot of people might be feeling unwelcome or scared or safe right now. I think that's probably especially true maybe in a football community. And I'm sure some people listening to this think those feelings are silly or wrong and, will be proven as such over time. And I sincerely hope that camp is right. We don't know. I really hope they're right. But to those, maybe feeling some sense of fear or not being welcome or, worry about the future, whatever. Because I think those are human emotions. And I hope all sides of the political spectrum could at least have empathy for that humanity, some worry. If roles were reversed, that side would have some anxiety about the direction things might be going. So I hope we can at least have compassion for that. And I want to express to those people having that anxiety, let's talk sports, let's talk Buffs, let's talk Broncos. If we do a let's talk Nuggets, if we any of that, always a home for y'all. Everyone's welcome as long as you're not an asshole and you like talking sports. Come on in. You're welcome. We don't care about the rest of it, and that's the grandstanding I'll do. But I just, hey, let's build some community together and let's be nice and uplifting. And I don't know if that's a message you can't get on board on, or you're offended by me saying that right now, look in a mirror. Cause I think that should be pretty universally accepted. Let's come together and show each other some compassion and love right now. So yeah, that's all. I'll hop off my soapbox now.
No, you nailed it, dude. Like, crazy world this last week. But we move on. We push forward. DM any of us, dude. All of these people in Let's Talk Broncos are amazing people. Zach, Joey, Bree, all of our Broncos writers, everyone. DM any of us. Reach out to any of us. Whether it's football or anything, we're all always open. Great people over there. So yeah, if that's all you got, Zach, let's hope CU gets a dub tomorrow.
Let's do it.
All right, as always,
Buffs.
go Buffs.